All right, this is the first problem from the college algebra. It says solve the equation. There's two ways to do this. You can either go ahead and factor it, or just use the technology. If you're going to use the technology, you would just do mode 5-3, and it would break out the answer on the Casio. First thing I'm going to do is actually factor it. So that would be s times s equals s squared. And then what times what equals 24? That's going to be 6 times 4 equals 24. And then go ahead, the 6 is bigger than the 4, so that automatically gets the negative sign. And then to figure out, it's got to be negative 10. So that's going to be a negative 4. And using the ZPP, the zero factor, s would equal positive 6 or 4. Using technology, using the Casio, I'm going to go ahead and just mode 5-3. So I hit mode 5 for the equation. 3 because it's x squared. Notice the 3 is x squared. Now I have to pick the coefficients, and the coefficients were 1 in front of the s variable, negative 10 was my b term, and positive 24 was my c term. And then I just hit equals a couple of times, and it'll generate the answer. There it is, x equals positive 6, x equals positive 4. Aspect of it, solving for x, I'm going to start doing the opposite. So the opposite of squaring is square rooting. So I square root both sides. And try to recall, when you put the square root in, you have to put a plus minus in. So this is going to turn out to be 3x minus 3, once the radical gets rid of the square, equals plus minus root 23. And I'm kind of done. It's got to be this one with the plus minus root 23. The rest would be this. I would add 3 to both sides because the opposite of minus 3 is plus 3. So I'd add 3 to both sides. Then I would divide both sides by that 3. And that would give me my answer choice. 3 plus or minus root 23 over 3. This one, no multiple choice, so I actually have to do it. So I'm going to do the same process. I'm going to square root both sides. And that being said, that's going to give me z plus 9 equals plus or minus whatever the square root of negative 36 is. And that's going to give me 6i. Because whenever you square root a negative, you generate this imaginary root of i. I'm going to subtract 9 from both sides. And once I do that, I'm basically done with the problem. My answer is negative 9 plus or minus 6i. For this one, I'm going to bring the 33 over. So that's going to give me y squared minus 12y equals negative 33. Whoops. I'm going to add 33 to both sides. So that's going to give me plus 33 equals 0. And it's asking me to use the quadratic formula. That's an indicator that I'm probably going to have a radical as an answer. So I'm just going to use the tech and mode 5-3 this in the Casio. And again, I'm going to hit mode 5 and then 3 to generate the x squared solver. And my leading coefficient was 1. My b term was negative 12. And my c term after I brought it over was positive 33. And I'm going to hit equals, and it gives me 6 plus root 3. And the other answer is going to be 6 minus root 3. And those are my two answers. So when I type the answer in, I would just type in 6 plus or minus root 3. My final answer is just going to be 6 plus or minus root 3. This one I want to solve for t. Again, I can't use any technology. I'm just going to go ahead and start performing the algebra on this. And notice they already have it solved for t with the plus minus in front of the answer. So all I really have to do is generate the answer by isolating t squared. So the opposite of divide by 6 is going to be multiply by 6. So I'm going to write that 6 up in front. So that's going to give me 6s equals g t squared. Then I'm going to divide both sides by g. And that's going to give me t squared equals 6s over g. The opposite of squaring is square rooting. And when you add the square root, you add the plus minus. So notice they already have the plus minus there, so I can neglect that for the time being. It also says to rationalize. So I'm not allowed to have a square root with the g in the bottom. So I have to rewrite this. So it's going to give me t equals plus or minus the square root of 6s over the square root of g. Let's try to recall when we want to simplify or rationalize the denominator, we multiply it by 1, represented as the denominator over itself. Now, multiplying fractions is no problem. It's the top times the top and the bottom times the bottom. The bottom is going to equal just plain old g. The top is going to give me 6gs nested in a radical with the plus minus in front of it. And that's the final answer. Find the value of the discriminant. Now, the discriminant is just what's underneath the radical in the Pythagorean or the quadratic formula. So, quadratic formula, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So, negative something plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. And all I really need to do is fill in this stuff underneath. So b is going to be negative 18. Let's take a look. A equals, b equals, c equals. A equals the 1 out front, b equals the negative 18, and c equals the 81. So I put my a there, and my c over here, 81. 18 squared is 324. And 4 times 81 is also 324. And notice, the discriminant of this problem is going to be 0. And when the discriminant is 0, that means it has one solution. The choices are, discriminant is 0, it has one solution, the discriminant is positive, so that means the discriminant is greater than 0. That means it'll have two answers, and they'll be real. When the discriminant is negative, it's going to have two non-real answers. And that's what they try to talk about here, non-real complex solutions. and have two non-real answers if the discriminant is negative. And try to think about it. If you square root a negative number, you're going to get something imaginary. So if I square root negative 36, recall that that equals 6i. So you're going to get something imaginary. Find three ordered pairs. These are triple pairs, so it can't be A. Let's see if 3, -3 is there. 3, -3 is there. That checks. -2, 6, that is there. It checks. 2, -4, that is there. It checks. It's most likely going to be B. -3, 3 is not there. That's actually the inverse of it. So it's choice B. Distance and midpoint. The distance formula is a big square root with the difference of the x's plus the difference of the y's. The difference of the x values, that's where the minus sign comes from, plus the differences of the y's, and you nest that all in a radical. So this is an x1, this is a y1, this is an x2, this is a y2. So I'm going to do x sub 2 minus x sub 1, 15 minus 10, and then 13 minus 8. That's going to give me a square root of 5 squared plus 5 squared. This will go nicely into the calculator. So now I want to use my calculator just to calculate a square root. So I have to hit mode 1. And that's normal computational mode. That's what mode 1 means. And I'm going to hit the square root button, which is right on the top. I'm going to type in 5 squared plus 5 squared. And it gives me the exact radical form. I could have actually entered in the original equation, and it would have broken it down for me. The original equation is a little bit tougher. You have to hit the parentheses, and then 15 minus 10. You have to be really diligent. Close the parentheses. Square it. Don't forget to square it. Minus, open parentheses, 13 minus 8. Close the parentheses and square it. And now it barely even shows up in the screen, but when I hit equals, I'm supposed to hit plus in the middle. That's a plus sign there. And notice now I get the 5 root 2. And a lot of times you can find out your error just by back arrowing into the problem using this mouse pad. So the actual distance was 5 root 2. The midpoint is another formula. It's going to be a big coordinate over 2. So the x value and the y value get divided by 2. Sometimes they simplify pretty nice, sometimes they don't. And now I'm going to add the x values, 10 plus 15. And I'm going to add the y values, 8 plus 13. And we can see that's going to be 25 over 2. And this is going to be 21 over 2. And that's my answer. You type it in just like that. I'm asked to graph this and fill in the table. The first thing I'd like to do is bring that 5x over to the other side. So I'm going to rewrite this as negative 5x plus 3y equals negative 15. And I'm going to use this same method called the cover-up method. I'm just going to cover up that negative 5x and solve this little tiny equation of negative 15 divided by 3. And that's going to give me negative 5. So that's when x equals 0, y equals negative 5. So I can go ahead and plot that, 0, negative 5. And I have that point. Now I have to find out what the x value is. So here, I'm going to cover up the middle term. And I'm going to solve that little tiny equation for x. So I divide both sides by negative 5. I just divide both sides by negative 5. And that's going to give me positive 3 when y equals 0. Well, I can go over here and plot that point. And that'll give me my line if it wants the line. And it does. We're going to use a memory device called Vuxoid for this particular question. And this is really useful. It actually makes problems go a lot quicker that are either vertical or horizontal problems. So notice it says a vertical line. So that's where we're going to use the word Vux. And that means when they give you the keyword vertical, we know that the slope is going to be undefined. And it's going to be x equals whatever the x value of the coordinate is. So see how it's 4? So x equals 4 is the line. So if I draw the actual graph, I would go right 1, 2, 3, 4. And x equals 4 would be the vertical line through that graph. And now it wants to know, it intersects the x-axis at what point? And that coordinate there is not there. It's actually the coordinate 4, 0 is where it lands on the x-axis. A little bit different of a wording for the question. Usually they ask just for the equation of the vertical line. This one it wants to know the coordinate on the x-axis that the vertical line goes through, and that would be 4. This one, it gives me a center and a radius. So the center is negative 1, positive 2. The center is negative 1, positive 2. And the radius is 4. So from that center, I'm going to go right 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to go left 1, 2, 3, 4. Down 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm just going to connect the dots and make the drawing. Now, on the computer, the program does the drawing for you. I don't have that luxury in this scenario. Now, what's the center radius form of the circle? That's going to be opposite of that. So x plus 1 squared plus the opposite of that, y minus 2 squared equals. And we want to know what it equals. Well, we see this 4, we square that, and it's going to equal 16. I'm sorry, I already graphed it over here. So there you go, there's the graph. They want me to figure out what the center and radius of this is, and it's written in this is called general form. This is a little rough. There's a little shortcut. I can quickly figure out what the center is, and that goes in this spot, and it's going to be a coordinate. All I need to do is take half of that term, and half of negative 8 is negative 4, but then I change the sign, so it's going to be 4. Then I take half of this y term, which is 1, but I change the sign to negative 1. So there's the center. Now to find out the radius, they want the radius here. What I need to do is take this and square it. So that's 16. Square that. Negative 1 times negative 1 is 1, and then I need to take this number and subtract it. So that's going to be 17 minus 13. That equals 4. And 4 is not my radius. 2 is. You have to square root that 4. And that's the method. This one's way more complicated. Way more complicated because it has that leading coefficient. So what I'm going to do for this one is I'm just going to divide everything by 8. I'm going to divide everything by 8 first. And that's going to give me x squared plus x, notice, that just turns to x, y squared, divide that by 8, I'm dividing each one by 8, and notice it works because when I divide 0 by 8, it goes away. You're allowed to do the same thing on both sides. So I'm going to divide that by 8, that's going to give me 4y, and then 478 divided by 8, I'm just going to leave that as negative 478 over 8. Actually, I'm going to put an equal sign and kick it over to the other side. And then I'm going to do my little move. I'm going to take half. I'm going to take half of that leading coefficient, which is 1. So half of 1 is 1/2, and then I change the sign. And then half of 4 is 2, and I change the sign. So now I have to square that, so that's going to give me 1/4 plus 4 plus 478 over 8. I'm going to add them all up and square root the solution. And when I add these up, I magically get a perfect square of 64. So that's not my radius. My radius is 8. In other words, the square root of 64. Then what's center radius? So instantly, it's going to be x plus 1 squared plus y minus 9 squared. And they tell me that the center, that the circle is tangent to the x-axis. So if I draw a quick xy axis, and I go -1 and then up 9, and they tell me it's tangent with the x-axis, that means the bottom of the circle is going to touch down here with the x-axis. And since that's -1, 9, the radius is going to be 9. So that's going to equal 9 squared, or 81. So that should be my answer. Domain, just copy down the 7s. Just copy down the x's. And see how it's in that brace notation? So we're going to do 7, comma, 28, comma, 34, comma. Don't do it twice. And 56. The range is the y values. 9, -4, don't do it twice. 2, don't do it twice. So it's in braces, 9, -4, don't do it twice. 2, don't do it twice. Is it a function? Do any of the x's repeat? And the answer to that is yes. The 7s repeat, so that is not a function. If anything repeats, it's not a function. That's not a function. It fails the vertical line test. Fails the vertical line test. Now it wants the domain. The domain are the x values, and the furthest left x value is -2. So it's going to be bracket, -2, and this goes on to infinity. The range is the lowest y value. It might not look it, but this x value goes down, this y value goes downward forever, and it goes upward forever, just gradually. So that range is going to be -infinity to infinity. These are the x values, these are y values. A quick mnemonic is what comes first in the alphabet, x or y. What comes first in the alphabet, d or r. So the domain is related to the x values, and the range is related to the y values. All I want to do is plug in -3 to that equation. Be careful, that negative is out front. And then I put in the -3, square it, plus 5 times -3 plus 3. And this is a nice one to do on the Casio. You can type it in pretty nice. Or you can do it by hand. That's going to be 9, but then a negative out front gives me -9 minus 15 plus 3. And this is where I get a little scared. So I'm going to just type that into the calculator. -9 minus 15 plus 3, and I get -21. F of 3a minus 5. So instead of plugging in a number, I'm going to plug this whole quantity into that x. So I'm going to rewrite it as -5 times something plus 6. And the something is this 3a minus 5. So go ahead and do your algebra. -15a plus 25 plus 6. Final answer, -15a plus 31. They want me to just solve this for y. That's all. So I'm going to minus x from both sides. I'm going to solve that for y and rewrite it in f of x notation. So I'm just going to minus x from both sides. And notice that gives me a 10 minus x. Then I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So that's going to give me 10 minus x over 2. And I'm not writing it in any special format. Then I'm going to take this 5 and throw it in for x. So 10 minus 5 is 5 over 2. Function's increasing. Notice, it's increasing from -infinity all the way up to -3. So the function is increasing from -infinity to -3. Now with increasing, decreasing, I put a parenthesis on it, not a bracket. Use a comma. It's also increasing on this interval from 3 to infinity. It's decreasing. It's decreasing. It's only decreasing on this little spot from -3 to 3. It's going downhill that way. So from -3 to 3. It is never constant. A constant function would just be a horizontal line going across. So I have to find the slope first. The slope of this is going to be 14 minus 0 over 0 minus -7. And that's going to equal 14 over 7. So the slope is 2. And the y-intercept is 14.